On our morning show today from WRCO, we're going to recap our New Year's Eve Triviathon. On the first part of the show, a little bit later on, we'll talk about an alumni event coming up as well this weekend in our area. I'm Phil Nee, joined by Beau Hinrichs for the first part of the morning show today. Beau, how did you feel it went during New Year's Eve the other night?
I think it went really well. Thanks for having me on. It's now the day after, the New Year's Day. Had a chance to kind of sleep a bit, get back into it, but still riding the high from that night. It was a lot of fun. Everybody seemed to really get into it, and it was kind of neat knowing that there was a team that actually kind of came from behind to get the win. Shows, anybody can win. Anybody can win, which is really good, really cool.
I was most happy with and impressed that all of the teams played all night long.
Yeah. Even some of the ones that were, towards the bottom, they were still answering, the final questions, which, good for them. And I'm sure we had a good amount of people also that called in. Maybe they didn't get it right, but they were still calling. Our lines were busy the entire night. Our team was not lacking for calls.
No, they stayed busy, that's for sure. So we pay tribute to Chris Simonson, Joanne Krulotz, Todd Albaugh was here for the second part of Triviathon, and Ken Feed, Mr. Triviathon. So they all played a role behind the scenes.
Each one did, and of course it's always nice having Ken Feed there, that extra person with vast trivia knowledge to be able to sit down and say, okay, let's take a look at this one. Maybe there's been some questions on it. Ask. There's nobody better to ask than Ken Thied.
There you go. The buck stops with him. That's for sure. Maybe you could talk about the scoring. In fact, the Nobody Knows team did pretty well. So did we had the team without a clue and all of that. Yep. So how did it measure out there when you look at the team?
So not a clue. Our winners came from behind. They got the win with 620 points. Now, Triple Threat, who ended up taking second, they were pretty much riding high most of the night. So they were doing quite well for themselves as well. Shout out to them. They also got 600. After that, we had Barnyard Scholars in third with 520 points. After that, we had a number of teams tying at 490 points, and they included the ID10TS, also Hairball, and Sour Gummy Worms. Following them, it was pretty close in points. 480 points, a number of teams. Party of 10, Rapture Ready, Sagacious Souls, and Ubiquitous Wayfarers. They were all at 480 points. Right behind that, at 460, we had the Red Hot Trivia Peppers. Great name, by the way. Just the Facts, Bruh, and had 450. Bronx Bombers. They came away with 430 points. The Tri-County Scholars had 420. At 400, it was Nobody Knows. The Boondock Trivia Brigade had 380 points. A tie at 370 with Reindeer Lips and Sorgy Sippers. Sorgy Slippers. Wait. Yeah, it is. It is Sippers. I had it right the first time. It is Sorgy Sippers.
Yeah.
I got it by the end of the night, so I felt pretty accomplished. Three Stooges at 360. At 350, Fairground Friends. The Lazy Patch Kids had 330. At 310, Not Great Expectations. At 290, the Warehouse Bees. 160 points went to Monona Minions, all the way from Iowa. At 110, it was Still Guessing. We had Smells Like Team Spirit at 100. Whiskery Mix at 80 points. And Babe Winkleman and the Fish Fevers at 50. They played the entire time. But, So congratulations to all those teams.
Indeed. Again, good participation, good fun. We received some good kudos through the text line that night. People were enjoying themselves, and that's what it's all about.
We really tried some new stuff, too, and it was good to get the kind of feedback. We asked some of the teams participating, hey, we're going to try some new stuff. Let us know how you feel, and they all seem to really like it. In particular, we had a question where we started off with 50 points. Giving people the chance to earn full point value if they could answer it. But they only got one clue. And then, in a minute, the point value went down to 40, but we gave you another clue. And we kept doing that, giving you another clue every minute down to 10 points. And that went over really well. It gave people a chance to kind of come back if they were close and wanted to risk it all. If you answer it right away, you could get 50 points. But if you're wrong, that was your only chance. But that went over really well. We got some good feedback on that. But all throughout the night, if somebody had a question or they wanted to maybe dispute, and we definitely are fully recognizing that there are some times where maybe a question is slightly vague, and we're able to give maybe some point value to somebody who did the research and showed us that it was, it could be understood as this, but also for people just reaching out to us and thanking us. That was really nice.
Yeah, it was. Good to hear. And again, it's a good public service, but we all have a little fun. Gives you something to do on New Year's Eve, and some folks plan their parties around it.
Yeah, the winning team even. They sent us a text.
Yeah, from Lone Rock. They had several team members. We'll talk about that in a little bit. We got some correspondence from them. But I'm going to run down the questions here, I think, Beau. Thanks
Sounds
for stopping
good.
by.
Yeah, happy to do so.
We're going to run them down, and in case you missed them the other night, give the point totals for each question and the answer as well. So if you weren't along with us on New Year's Eve, you can play along a little bit today, although some of them are a little tough. That's one of the feedbacks I had. Someone told me the other day, they were really way too tough. And but with the internet and everything else, it's hard. You don't want to make them so easy that everybody answers within a second. Although there were a few of those questions too that I think were kind of softball lobs. But you also need to have a little challenge in there, and that's where some of them came through. So Ken Feed contributing to our questions, and also Chris Simonson and Dan Burrison from Mineral Point, our good buddy there. He's Mr. History and Trivia. He helped us out as well, and just some things that we accumulated at the station through the years, through the year, we were able to add to Triviathon this year. So let's look back. There were 35 questions. Number 1, Major League Baseball Hall of Fame player and coach. His real name was Lawrence Peter, yet he was nicknamed for a bear. The last name of this famous major leaguer is what we were looking for. And the last name, Berra, as in Yogi Berra. And that was one that teams did very well in. It was a 10-point question, meaning most of the teams got it right. Number 2, what do these have in common? Maria Ann, Australia, Sour, and the Beatles. Well, that was a 10-pointer. Again, a lot of teams did well on that one, finding out that it was apples that they all had in common. In fact, more particular, Granny Smith apple, as Maria Ann was Granny Smith and started those apples in Australia. Of course, they're sour, and the Beatles used that for their record label in the late 60s. And number 3, from the book Killing Kennedy, what was the movie about assassinating a president that Lee Harvey Oswald watched with his wife days prior to the assassination of John F. Kennedy? And the movie was called Suddenly. Just a one-word title, a movie from 1954. That was a 30-point question, so a little more difficult. We had quite a few answers for The Manchurian Candidate, which came out, it was a little newer movie than that, came out about 1963 as well, but not correct. Number 4, who was the first Milwaukee Brewer pitcher to lead Major League Baseball for a season in a pitching stat? The correct answer, we go way back to 1971, and it was Ken Sanders, who saved 38 games and appeared 83 games in 83 games that year. That was a 40-point question, so our first 40 of the night. Number 5, what is the six-digit number on the Milwaukee Road car featured on the Tourism Center in Richland Center? I was surprised that was a 10-point question, meaning that a great deal of the teams got it right. The number is 992064. That's something that you probably drive by all the time and don't notice the number. If you do, it doesn't really click, but a lot of people were able to finagle that and find that. Number 6, who is the person in commonality with these artists? Frank Sinatra, Leslie Gore, Ray Charles, Aretha Franklin, and Ringo Starr. The correct answer was Quincy Jones, who produced songs and albums for each of them. So a lot of teams got that right as well as we commemorated Quincy Jones, who passed away in 24. That was a 10-pointer. The number 7 question in Triviathon 2024. It is well known that former Major League Baseball player Ryan Duran was born in the northern Richland County village of Cazenovia. Can you name another native son of Cazenovia whose name is occasionally mentioned during Milwaukee Brewers radio broadcasts? Well, that was a 50-pointer, our first 50-pointer of the night, and I believe only a couple of teams got that one correct. The answer is George Webb. So if you're listening to Brewer games, you might hear about the Webb Burger Run. When the Brewers score 5 or more runs, it's 5 burgers for $5 at George Webb restaurants. Well, there really was a George Webb who operated a chain of hamburger restaurants, would still exist in Milwaukee. Did you know George Webb was born in Cazenovia? That was one of those that was pretty hard to find. And there was just a couple of spots where you could find it. If you knew the name George Webb, you could put that in, and it would come up that he was born in Cazenovia. But you had to kind of know that. And so a couple of teams did find that out. That's maybe one of my favorite questions of the night right there. Again, it was a 50-pointer. Number 8, Who Am I? We played a soundbite, a snippet from a past, in fact, Those Were the Days broadcast. And we do that from time to time, playing a celebrity voice to see if you can decipher who it is.
I would like to have had an affair with Elvis, but I loved his wife, and she was going to have a baby, and, you just don't do things like that.
It seemed on screen you two would have made a good couple, I guess. That's why a lot of people probably said that.
Oh, I don't know. I guess, it was probably cute, the really tall guy and the little midgety girl, I guess.
That was none other than Nancy Sinatra. That was a 40-point question. A few teams got it right, enough to make it 40. So let's see. That was number 8. Number 9 question. According to the book Killing Reagan, when President Reagan was shot in 1981, who announced that they were assuming power while Reagan was incapacitated? That was none other than Alexander Haig, who told the press as Secretary of State he took power. As I mentioned that night, he must not have had civics, because we learned how it worked and who would get power if the president, something happened to the president or vice president, so on and so forth. So actually, I think he was about 4th in line at that point. But anyway, that was a 10-pointer. Number 9, 10 points for our teams. Triviathon question number 10. Early on in their storied history, green and gold became the Packers' team colors based on Notre Dame. Which individual is credited with selecting those colors? Well, our answer was Curly Lambeau, and that was the answer, but not the definitive answer, as many teams got the name of Gene Rosani, who was a coach in the early 1950s and who had changed the colors somewhat. So we did accept that, but it was actually Curly Lambeau who went, back in the early days and was a Notre Dame alumnus and brought the idea for those colors and the emblem to Green Bay. So Lambeau or Rosani would be accepted for question number 10, a 10-pointer. Number 11, what do these have in common? Wyoming, Memphis, New Orleans, Bob Dylan. That was a toughie, I thought. But teams did well. It came through it was a 10-pointer, meaning a lot of teams got that one right. What does it have to do with, or what does it have in common with? It would be Highway 61, as it runs from Wyoming, Minnesota, all the way through Memphis and New Orleans. Bob Dylan, who was born along that route in Minnesota, had an album called Highway 61 Revisited. Question number 12. Who was the first NBA player from a Milwaukee franchise to earn Rookie of the Year honors? The answer, Bob Pettit from the Milwaukee Hawks in 1955. That's another one of those where someone found a source in 1952 where there was a Milwaukee player that earned those honors, so we did accept that as well. Hawkins, I believe, was the last name of that player. But that was one of those, that was before there actually was an NBA Rookie of the Year back in the early 50s, and they found the answer. But they were Rookie of the Year according to the sports writers at that time, and so we did accept that as well. But a lot of teams got the right answer, Bob Pettit, and they picked up 20 points for their teams. Question 13, this one, it was a skunker. the only one of the night where no one got it right. It turned out to be a very, very tough one. Richland County native Ann Walsh Bradley has announced that she will no longer run for the Wisconsin State Supreme Court this year, but she was not the first to graduate from a Richland County high school and serve on the state's highest court. It was the first high school graduate from Richland County to serve on the Wisconsin State Supreme Court. He attended Sextonville High School. His name, Chester A. Fowler. And that will be coming up on a future Richland County history moment later this year. Again, no teams were able to find that one out. Not a lot online exists about Sextonville High School history, I would guess. Number 14, which Wisconsin high school has won the championships in the most WIAA-sponsored sports, including boys and girls? That was a 20-pointer, as teams were able to find, a lot of them were able to find, Madison West. They won titles in 19 separate WIAA-sponsored sports. So they go back as a high school to 1930. So I'm sure there are some sports in there that no longer exist as a sponsored athletic event for the WIAA. Question number 15. The Richland Center Post Office is a downtown landmark. What is the name of the Postmaster General listed on the cornerstone of the building? Well, that would be Postmaster General James Farley. And that was a 10-point question. Lots of teams found that out. Question 16. Dave Craig played 19 seasons in the NFL after his college career at Milton College in Wisconsin. Which area high school coach spent a season as a college teammate of Dave Craig? The correct answer, Kurt Thompson at Riverdale. Kurt Thompson was a freshman when Dave Craig was a senior and was a college teammate. Question number 16 was a 40-pointer, by the way. Question 17, what do these have in common? Race car driver, Elvis Costello, the Gin Blossoms, and Taylor Swift. Well, the correct answer is the name Allison. Bobby Allison passed away during the year of 2024. Also, Elvis Costello had a song called Allison. The Gin Blossoms had a song called Allison Road. And maybe you didn't know it, Taylor Swift's middle name is Allison. That was a 40-pointer. Number 18, who was the first presidential candidate from Wisconsin who ran as a third-party political candidate? And the answer that we accepted, Robert M. La Follette. 1924, or Fighting Bob. That was the correct answer. That was a 20-pointer, so a lot of teams did well with that one. Question number 19. The Big Ten graphics, both promoting the conference, featuring all the schools in an aerial 3D look, both last year and this year, includes From West to Coast, East Coast, with Rutgers at the end of the clip. What is the verbiage promoting Rutgers? The correct answer, the birthplace of college football. So that was a 10-pointer. A lot of teams were able to find that one, which I was surprised teams did that well in Triviathon to find out that correct answer. Question number 20. The uncle of a Southwest Wisconsin two-time WIAA wrestling state champion played a recurring role on the Bob Newhart Show. We were looking for the name of the uncle of the wrestler, and that was none other than John Fiedler, who played Mr. Peterson, or Emil Peterson, on the old Bob Newhart Show. That was a great show. Great question, too, I thought. So we look back on that for Triviathon 2024. So, again, the Fiedler question was a 30-pointer. John Fiedler was the uncle of Curtis Fiedler, who's the current wrestler at the current wrestling coach, I should say, at Mineral Point High School. And coached for a while at River Valley as well. That was number 20. We move on to number 21. According to a newspaper article in the Richland County History Room archives, which Richland County judge completed the remainder of his term blind? That Richland County judge was D.L. Downs. And quite a few teams found that as well, a 20-pointer, so kind of middle of the pack. Teams were able to get that right. Question 22, in the first Back to the Future movie, what was the name of the mall the car came back to at the end of the movie? Well, it was originally Twin Pine, but the car hit it. when they went back in time. So when they came back to the present time, the mall was known as Lone Pine Mall. Some pretty creative writing there. And that was question number 22. And that was a 20-pointer. Question 23. When Beau Ryan became the head men's basketball coach at UW-Platteville, which well-known Southwest Wisconsin coach became his top assistant? Well, the answer, former Richland Center coach Denny Morgan, who started his career at, as a player in high school at Dodgeville, but had some great success at Middleton and some other places, but also the top assistant. That one tripped quite a few people up. I think they heard top assistant at Platteville, and we had a lot of Greg Guards, and we had that one argued a little bit. But as Mr. Theed came on the air and told us, the question again says, when Beau Ryan became the head men's basketball coach, who was his top assistant? Greg Gard was like in junior high when Beau Ryan became the head men's basketball coach at Platteville. So that complaint, or that challenge did not hold water. Again, Dennis Morgan, the correct answer. That was a 40-pointer for question number 23. Question 24, which is the only capital city in South America to face the Pacific coast as its western border? The right answer, Lima, Peru. A lot of teams found that out, and that was a 10-pointer. Question 25, who is the only president to serve domestically inside the continental United States that was not president of the United States? The correct answer, Jefferson Davis was president of the Confederacy. That was a 30-pointer, so a lot of teams were able to muster that knowledge or find that one out. Question 26, the last episode of Newhart, a classic and considered one of the best endings of a series in history. It was all a dream. Emily tells Bob to go back to sleep, and it's the last time for Chinese food. What does Bob suggest that Emily do in his closing line? That would be wear more sweaters, which was a tie-in to his wife in the sitcom Newhart, Joanna. Question number 27. That one varied in points, and that was the one that we told you about where we had declining points. If you got it right with the first clue, you had a minute with the first clue. It was a 50-pointer. Then we went to 2 minutes, or we went to the second minute and gave another clue. And you had a chance to get 40 points if you got it in that 2 minutes. And then we moved for another minute, and it was a 30-pointer, and so on and so forth, down to 10. I think all of our teams got it by the time it was a 20-point question. So the first clue was NFL Hall of Fame player got his start in the USFL. There were a couple of teams that got through the line and guessed correctly and made it a 50-point question. And then the 40-point level, after 2 years, the league went defunct, so he took a pay cut to sign with an NFL team. The 30-point level, he became a free agent, signing the third highest paid contract at that time. And then we added another minute. It was a 20-pointer. He started with the Memphis Showboats, and then at the 10-point level, it would have been he went from the Eagles, then became a Green Bay Packer. Famously, that would be Reggie White. So congratulations to teams. A lot of them did well and enjoyed that excitement. A little bit of pressure there to answer in a certain amount of time and try to keep up with your fellow teams. And let's see, question number 28. Which Southwest Wisconsin high school was the first Class C WIAA track and field champion? Well, we tip our caps to Wazeeka, which won the first Class C state track and field championship back in 1927. That was a 20-point question. Question number 29, which musician do these clues describe? Sturgeon Bay, a Grammy Award, Madison, Wisconsin, and Shades. The right answer, Pat McDonald, who earned a Grammy for Best New Artist for the song The Future's So Bright, I Gotta Wear Shades. Born in Sturgeon Bay, won a Grammy Award, and also was a part of the Madison, Wisconsin music scene. That was a 20-pointer. Question 30. In the classic episode, Herman Munster plays for the Dodgers. In 1965, the actual manager was Walt Alston, who played the manager in that classic episode of the Munsters. It was Leo DeRocher, who was a coach and famous player as well as manager, but not at that time. That was a 10-pointer. He famously appeared in a few other episodes, too. He's in a classic episode of the Beverly Hillbillies, in which he tries to sign Jethro. Jethro, I think, would have been a good prospect for baseball, but didn't have a lot going on upstairs. Let's see. 31. John Coombe is recognized as the first white settler in Richland County. Yet, who is said to be the first white person to settle inland in Richland County, building his home on the Pine River? The correct answer, Robert Aiken. That was a 40-pointer. Question number 31. Question 32, a John Wayne question about the movie Big Jake, as they would go back and forth with the dialogue. And when someone would ask him who he was, he'd replay Jacob McCandles, and they'd say, "I thought you was dead." The final actor to do that, or the character to do that, who did Big Jake kill at the end of the movie? It was a character played by Richard Boone, and that was a 30-pointer. Question 33. The first athlete to win both the 100-meter and the 200-meter in the same Olympics was born in Dodgeville. We were asking teams to name him, and many did. That was a 10-point question, meaning most all teams got that right. Archie Hahn at the 1904 Olympics in St. Louis. Question 34. What is the year on the cornerstone of the Brewer Public Library in Richland Center? 1969. In fact, we talked about it on a morning show last year, a celebration of 55 years. So that was a 10-point question. Question 35 and the last one, and I was really surprised teams did extremely well in this one. NFL Promotions, All Rights Reserved, appears on most game highlights and features historic running backs going from left to right, having had only one current player at the time. But this was changed when this current player switched teams and was replaced by number 28 of the New York Jets, Curtis Martin, who is the current NFL player that no longer appears in the 10-second clip. The right answer, Christian McCaffrey, then with the Carolina Panthers and now with the 49ers. There you are. 35 questions. That one, by the way, was a 10-pointer. So pretty impressed the teams did well in that one, and that was kind of a hurried time. So we do have correspondence today from our winning team, a team for Triviathon that we were just excited about. And they actually came from behind, captained by Mike Carpenter. And I sent him some questions this morning, and he responded. He says they were playing at their house in Lone Rock, and the team members include Laura and Mike Carpenter, Tracy and Dane Peterson, Michelle Peckham and Gabby Novi, Chris and Destiny Shannon, Penny and Roger Boehringer. Also a shout out to Stacy Olson, who was another team member who couldn't join them in Lone Rock. This was only the second year playing, and they were still very amazed that they won it. So I asked him about favorite questions, and they responded. Tracy's favorite was the Dennis Morgan question because he was her coach at Beau Ryan's basketball camp back in 1985. And they said they also liked the challenge question, which, though it was stressful, the Reggie White question, they liked that where there were different clue point levels as well. They liked the Richland County settler question. They also liked questions where they were given several items and had to figure out what they all have in common. They thought the trickiest question was the George Webb question about him being a Cazenovia native. So Chris, Dane, Roger, Penny, and Tracy, with not only their sports knowledge, but their local connections, really were key to answering the sports questions correctly. And their teenage member, Gabby, had Googling skills, which were on point and instrumental in several of the answers. They say the last question was a tough one. Getting the answer phoned in right at the last second, combined with the chaos of ringing in the new year, then hearing that they actually won was all very surreal. So they were riding the high after winning Triviathon, and they say overall fantastic evening. So thanks for the correspondence there for the team and the teams that all played on New Year's Eve on Tuesday night. But yeah, they did have a clue. A lot of teams, and I love the names too, that people came up with. Some of the old stalwarts were in there, but also some that they came up with new ideas for this year. So the plan is to do a Triviathon in 2025. So be listening. Yeah, every once in a while we hear something right on the airwaves, and it's like, boop, light bulb. Okay, that one should be saved for Triviathon. And sometimes we do it that way. But again, we have to, unfortunately, make the question quite vague, so it's not so easy to find it with just the quickest quickest search engine you have. We appreciate listening. WRCO Radio's morning show will continue in just a moment. In fact, we're going to talk about an alumni event coming up, an alumni event for Ithaca alumnus on Saturday night. So details straight ahead here on our morning show.